Well, now let's return to our top story this hour. Over 30 countries, including the US, have officially recognised the Libyan Rebel Council, that's the NTC, as the legitimate governing authority there, reiterating earlier calls that Colonel Gaddafi and his family must go. Well, let's discuss this development now with Dr. Franklin Lamb. He's director of an organisation called Americans Concerned for Middle East Peace, and he's joining us there live in Tripoli in Libya. Dr. Lamb, so Washington and its allies have made their support of the opposition official, but it's unclear, isn't it, who the rebels actually are? So therefore, is there not a danger of them turning against the US and indeed its allies a few years down the line, as we've seen so often in the past?
Yes, well, that's right. But just to tell you, update on the situation here, since that news broke, and a lot of people are glued to their radios, I had a hard time coming into this hotel for this interview because of increased security. So the fact that the 30 countries are unanimously backing the NTC, that NATO has said they will fight and continue to bomb during Ramadan, and it was widely assumed here that there would be a ceasefire during Ramadan, it's clear that the contract group is putting maximum pressure on the government here. And you're quite right, nobody knows a whole lot, and there's a lot of questions about who these different factions who are arguably now fighting among themselves for power in the East, what will ultimately be their relationship with the Americans, who have a long history, you know, of misjudging their allies and getting themselves involved. But I think all of this is because NATO cannot accept or afford a defeat, nor can the White House. So they're using the Istanbul conference to maximize pressure on the Gaddafi government.
I've just read one of your recent articles there from Tripoli. You're saying that the bombing has actually increased Gaddafi's popularity. Therefore, in Tripoli, with the announcement of this news, how has that news, where the recognition of the rebels has now officially been stated, how has that news gone down with the people you've been talking to there in Tripoli?
Well, of course, the news is fairly recent, but some of it was anticipated. I think it's sobering. It is a blow. I think there was a hope that there would be less unanimity. Of course, the Chinese and the Russians stayed away, and they will have a major function if the group takes this to the Security Council, and they may put the brakes on it there. But I see this as a power play to maximize international pressure over the weekend to try to shake loose the resolve of the government here. But I think the people talking to, as with the earlier, 4 months of bombing, it steeled their resolve somehow. I think I'm more concerned about it as a Westerner than the people are here. I think they're resolved to see this thing through and to repel any NATO attack on the capital of their country.
Let's talk about that $30 billion of frozen Gaddafi assets that could be passed on to the rebels themselves. The thing is, there's a lot of trust in that, isn't there? How can they be sure that this vast amount of money will be properly spent?
Good question, especially given the track record of accountability or lack of accountability for American funds and funds generally in Iraq and Afghanistan. I would assume the NATO people will say they're going to watch it, or that the Congress is going to demand that the accounting office have a role in this somehow. But surely that's a problem. Money has a way of disappearing fast in critical situations like this.
But this offer coming perhaps with strings attached, a way some people might see this as a form of bribery, making sure that there is going to be a reward in the future, and I'm talking about the country's huge oil resources.
Yes, exactly. I think one could see it that way. I mean, certainly, that will encourage and is perhaps designed to have more people leave this government and, turn and go to the other side. I see politics in every aspect of what I read coming out of Istanbul just an hour and a half ago.
Just finally, I've spoken to you before there in Tripoli, and you gave us a very graphic account of the bombing that has been taking place there. Tell us about the conditions for ordinary people there briefly. I know that you're in Tripoli, but you've been outside of Tripoli. What are you seeing? We're hearing reports of living conditions really now in a dire state, and many people might say that sort of money should be going to the Libyan people. What do you make of conditions there, and should these people be receiving that money for help?
Well, I'll tell you, on the street, except for a little tension and maybe stress this afternoon, people reflecting on that news, things remain calm and plenty in the markets. I see, we hear of some shortages, but I travel around a lot in the night and the day here, and I think the population hasn't changed much. But of course, if benzene coming here today, of course you see long lines waiting for benzene and gasoline and things like that, baby formula, some items are missing. So far it's okay. The question is the next few days, the next week, the next 2 weeks before the run up to Ramadan, I think will be a critical period, and we may see more pressure brought against the civilians here. If there is shortages and it becomes serious, more serious, well then obviously the international community has the obligation not just to channel goods every way they can into Benghazi and Misrata in those areas, but to bring them over here in the West. And we haven't seen those yet, but we'll have to wait to see how what develops here and what the international community's response is.
Dr. Franklin Lamb, Director at Americans Concerned for Middle East Peace, joining us live there in Libya. Thank you.